What's going on, everybody? Welcome on back to On Texas Football Weekend Edition. We're going to be diving into a number of different opportunities and options that Texas will have to really kind of punish defenses this year in terms on the offensive side of the ball, personnel groupings, the playmakers that they have at their disposal now. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun for Quinn Ewers, Steve Sarkisian, that offense, and for us getting to watch that high-flying offense as we anticipate. But first, man, Saturday's here. I know it's super sunny outside in Austin right now. I'm excited. Jerry, how's the road been? You've been all over the place.
Yeah, I was on the road a little bit this week. Went to a track meet on Saturday out in the Humble area. Had a bunch of guys, Texas targets, Nick Townsend, DeCaney, Tanook Hines, Zion Williams. Ryan Foji committed to Oklahoma, was throwing the shot put. So there's a lot of talent, some young kids. 2026 offensive lineman at Colleen Shoemaker that's got a chance, it looks like. Number of, I would guess, probably 20 future Division I football players at this track meet when I was there. And I'm sure there was more that, were under a tent asleep until they ran in the late afternoon.
Hey, that's what I've been doing in this weather. It feels like no better than, just in your bedroom at home. So I'm excited for this one because it's a lot of fun. Obviously I had that article earlier this week on ontexasfootball.com, just kind of, theorizing or hypothesizing about where these guys will be lined up in Sarkisian's offense. Spring ball is now about 22, 23 days away from kicking off. So we'll finally get the first idea of where these guys will be used in Sark's offense going into 2024. But Jerry, first, I want to hear, what you kind of think the base personnel grouping will be and who will be on the field for Texas in their base look.
Yeah, I think one back, CJ Baxter. He started last year. I think he's going to start this year. Obviously, Jonathan Brooks ended up being the starter once Baxter got hurt and really came on, right? But let's just say it was CJ Baxter, Gunnar Helmet tight end, right? And then you get into that wide receiver spot, which is interesting because starting does matter to guys, no matter if they say it or not, if they toe the company line or not. Obviously, Isaiah Bond's going to be a starter. I think Matthew Golden's a starter. Silas Bolden's not here for spring, so this is the opportunity for a Jonte Cook, for DeAndre Moore, maybe Ryan Niblett, who probably needs a little more time. But let's just say Silas Bolden is the starting slot receiver because it looks like Steve Sarkisian really attacks speed and pushing that scheme vertically as much as possible in the offseason headed into first year in the SEC. So let's go with Bolden in the slot, Bond and Matthew Golden on the outside. I think receivers 4 or 5 will be Jonte Cook and Ryan Wingo.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And you mentioned the speed and obviously Sarkisian's affinity to, getting speed on the field. We saw it at Alabama. We've seen it at previous stops. Obviously last year, the first guy that we think about all the time when it comes to Texas wide receivers is Xavier Worthy and what he brought to the field. I kind of came up with, a fun little grouping of guys that if Texas really wanted to go fast and put the pedal to the metal here and just really put defenses in a bind, they have the pieces to do that. They could do it at wide receiver, obviously. Tight end is now a spot where the addition of Amari Niblack, you can toss him in the field and say, all right, go deep, and it'll put defenses in tough spots. Jaden Blue was, one of those guys who had one of the fastest ball carrying times from the 2023 season as well. I'm looking at a group right now where if Texas really wanted to go fast, there might be a guy with 10.5 speed on the bench in Ryan Wingo.
Yeah.
And so the group that I had there is Jaden Blue, Isaiah Bond, Jonte Cook, Silas Bolden, and Amari Niblack. And I think right there, you're kind of putting defenses in a spot where it doesn't matter how many guys you drop because that speed is going to be almost impossible to guard.
Yeah, so I one of the things I look at is Jatavion Sanders is a good down the field threat at tight end, but he's a tick and a half slower than Niblack. I'll be interested to see what Sanders runs, but let's just say he runs 4.68, 4.7, right? He may even run 4.72, 4.73, depending. These guys have been training for 40, so obviously they're going to run their fast at times. But Niblack's going to be in the mid 4.5s. So, that is a big difference at the tight end position. That's a different healthy respect for a defensive coordinator. Like, whoa, this guy now, he can race down the seam and be an issue. And then you have a guy like Bond, okay? He can – I think what Sarkisian's going to do, if you're one of the guys who's not the who's not the guy that Sark's going to stretch the field vertically with to really spread teams out. And when I say spread teams out, I'm talking spread them out vertically versus horizontally. Then
Definitely.
your guys that catch the ball on the move in the short and intermediate game should have a lot of opportunities next season. So Silas Bolden, Jonte Cook, I'm looking at these guys, Matthew Golden, and a little bit because he's almost like a running back after the catch as far as leg strength, not built like one, but those guys I think are going to have crazy opportunities in 2024, and it's going to make Texas so tough to defend. But to your point, if you want to go a true NASCAR offense, and normally NASCAR's tempo, but I'm talking NASCAR speed, you could put Ryan Wingo out there with Isaiah Bond and Nyblack and Jaden Blue and Silas Bolden. And then you're sitting there saying, okay, somebody's not in the 4x100. Okay. Somebody's got the alternate of that group. And it's
Which
not
is crazy. That's a crazy thing to look at.
If you could put a legitimate 4x100 meter relay team out there and all those guys run 10-5, 10-6, then you really have an offense that's going to scare defensive coordinators today.
Absolutely. I liked what you said about Amari Nyblack in the tight end spot, because I think we saw it earlier in Sark's tenure here when he brought in Jalil Billingsley. He likes those tight ends that can, create downfield issues. The inline blocking, we can work on that a little bit. But I think you're starting to see that a little bit more in recruiting as well. Jordan Washington has that ability to go make big plays down the field. He actually has a little bit more of a history inline blocking as well in high school. But then you look further down the line with Emory Winston in 2025, and you're like, this guy averaged probably 17, 18 yards a catch in high school last year. He can make the plays down the field. How important is that in terms of creating mismatches down the field at the tight end spot? We saw it, this past year with Jatavian Sanders, but like you said, that speed necessarily wasn't his greatest strength, being that physical mismatch was.
Yeah, so I equate it to basketball in a way too, okay? Basketball has come to offensive basketball at the highest level, right, is about being able to space a floor to give everybody room to operate. So your big guy who's a stretch four that can shoot it stretches that floor spacing, maximizes that floor spacing. If you have a tight end like a Nyblack, those guys are rare. This is why I think tight end position is actually going to be better next year than it was this year. And that's saying something. Now, Helm's a year older, but Nyblack is like the pick and pop four man in the NBA. That creates unbelievable field spacing. We'll call it field spacing, to where Sark can stress you vertically and he can stress you horizontally. And what else that does is that's going to take a rusher away out of the box, in my opinion. So teams are going to be faced with a decision. They're going to be like, all right, we're going to bring the extra guy, and we got to get home before these downfield routes can develop. But if you can't get home, so this is what will tell the story. If you see Texas, Sark has ultimate faith in his offensive line from a pass protection standpoint to protect Quinn, to give his down the field routes time to develop, then you'll know Sark thinks he has something special next year. Bottom line.
It's exciting, again, to sit back and kind of daydream about the potential of this offense. And, I wanted to stick with the tight ends because it's a group that, gets overshadowed a little bit by the additions in the wide receiving room. But I wanted to bring in the running backs as well. We saw Texas go to that two-back kind of pony package, as Rod called it, in the Washington game. We know that he likes going to two tight end formations as well in the middle of the season with Helm and Sanders. When you look at how many possibilities and combinations of guys that you can throw into a two-back and a two tight end set, which one might be a little bit more difficult for defenses in your eyes?
I think the pony package is always difficult if you have the talent at running back, right? I mean, I think that's a tougher task defensively to make decisions on personnel. I really think that stresses a defense in a different way. And if you have two different styles of backs, both those guys can catch the football. And you see CJ Baxter in a blocking role, right? But I think that can put a different stress on a defense from a personnel standpoint, to where you can kind of really play with pre-snap motion in that pony package. And you can really get some favorable wide receiver matchups in that pony package as well. I like that a lot for Texas. But I think the key to remember with Sarkisian, he's going to be multiple. He wants to present it all, because the last thing he wants to do is for a defensive coordinator to get comfortable
You're right.
with
Absolutely.
playing Texas. That is his goal, is to keep a defensive coordinator uncomfortable. That's number one. That's the goal. And if he can achieve that goal, Kalen DeBoer did that up until Michigan last year because they ran the pin and pull action, right? In the run game. So they had outside run game. They slid the pocket for Penix, and then they had all that vertical ability with long limbs at wide receiver. Yep. So a defensive coordinator could never get comfortable playing Washington. And it's different with Sark, but that's what he's headed to. That's what he ideally wants. Any offensive coordinator ideally wants is do not get comfortable playing me.
Yeah. And we saw how difficult it was throughout the entire season, obviously, to defend that. There was one other topic here. You talk about the 2-back, the 2 tight end. In a way, last year, there was a 1.5 back situation with Texas. When they would throw Keelan Robinson in the field, most times he would line up outside of the backfield, and he'd just be that guy motioning around in motion when the snap occurred. I think Silas Bolden has been, pinned into that role a little bit, but he is more of a natural wide receiver. He does come off of a season at Oregon State last year where he had 750 receptions and over 50 catches. Like, this guy is a true down the field threat. At 5'8", he can stretch the field vertically and make plays in contested spaces. What's interesting to me is how Texas will use him.
Yeah.
Because we won't get that idea in the spring ball with him not being on campus. Last year at Oregon, he lined up at 83% of his snaps out wide. So only about 16, 17% were in the slot or in the backfield. I think you're going to see Texas use him a little bit more closer to the ball, where they can use him in orbit motion, jet motion in front of the quarterback as well. And that'll just be, again, a little twist and wrinkle that they can throw into opposing.
CJ, and by the way, in that pony package, it wouldn't be a shock to see him in the backfield.
I'm right there with you, because that was one of Sarkisian's biggest staples whenever he first came to this job. They talked about what he wants to do in his offensive philosophy, get his playmakers the ball in space. We saw it immediately with Bijan.
If you want to get really fast, you throw out a pony package with Baxter and Silas Bolden, and then you're not taking a wide out off the field. That's when you want to go hyper fast in a power package. I think Rod Babers would love that offense.
Yeah, no, that have him flipped over in his chair a little bit with the excitement of the possibility of that. But Jared, this leads me to my last question here. And we know Texas had a great year in 2023. They're sending 4 guys to the NFL draft from the playmaking side of things. When you don't include Jonathan Brooks, you add him in there, you got 5. A lot of guys right there with a lot of experience, production. The accolades are there. But you start looking at this group, and you start thinking about, again, the possibilities, but obviously the production and the experience that is coming into this room.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that, by December, we're sitting back thinking, well, that was the best group that Texas has ever had under Sarkisian when it comes to the offensive playmaking group?
I actually think it will be. And that's not a knock on last year's team. They went to the college football playoff, but I'm a firm believer that Nye Black is going to be more of a threat. And I'm not saying he's going to have as many catches as Jatavion Sanders. There's going to be more weapons on the field. I think he's going to be a bigger downfield threat. I think Bolden and I think Jordan Whittington was a heck of a good football player. He had leadership. He was tough. Texas is going to have to replace a lot of things he does, but Texas will also put a more explosive player on the field. I mean, and that's where things get scary. And here's the other thing is Ryan Wingo, Jonte Cook really wasn't ready from a mental standpoint last year to be trusted in key situations on a team competing to go to the playoff. That he should take that step.
Yep.
Ryan Wingo comes in and is ahead of where Jonte was from the mental side of picking up the offense and the trust factor of being able to execute the motions and everything pre-snap. Then I don't have any doubts this offense is going to be scarier than last year. The other thing, CJ, center Baxter's in year 2. Jaden Blue's in year 3, right? Yeah. I mean, Trey Wisner's in year 2.
The game should slow down.
Gunnar Helm is year 4. Nye Black's year 3. I mean, these guys are really experienced players now on offense. Last year, there was a little more inexperience around Quinn at times outside of the wide receiver position. I mean, Cedric Baxter's a freshman running back, right? And then when Jonathan Brooks goes down, that was Jaden Blue's first true action of his career. Let's be real. He'd been in games.
And it started off slowly because he did have that fumble against Wyoming, and it felt like he wasn't necessarily trusted after that. It took a long time for him to get back in that groove.
So you got guys that are more confident than they've ever been on a team with an experienced offensive line around them. I think it's going to be a more explosive offense this year. Now, the key is within the staple of what Sark wants to do. He's not going to go NASCAR. He's not going, he's not just going to go tempo all the time and throw everything out he's always done to be successful. That's not what's going to happen. It's going to be inside zone run, right? I mean, this team is being built to compete in the SEC, not in the Pac-12. And that's something to remember. Well, it was the Pac-12. But this is a line of scrimmage league, and you have to be good up front. And if you're good up front and you have your staple in the run game, right, and everything else blossoms around that, and even if you start pass to set up run, you're truly starting with, and you got to be able to run the football to close out games.
Definitely.
And so it starts up front, and it starts with that inside zone run. And if that's really good, if that continues to be a staple of your offense in the run game, then that makes everything else tougher to defend.
And on top of that, you get 4 out of 5 starters a year ago back on the offensive line, all of which now older as well. If you're Quinn Ewers, you have to be sitting around thinking, I'm in one of, if not the best positions for any quarterback in the country. Not only with the continuity.
CJ, think about this. To your point, didn't mean to cut you off, but you just brought up a thought I had. So next year, he's going to look in his tight end room. And remember, last year, going into the year, Texas was 8-5 the year before. This year, he looks at the tight end room and say, wait, Gunnar Helm and Nyblack played in the playoffs last year. Isaiah Bond played in the playoff last year. Matthew Golden, he did not, but he torched us. Silas Bolden was a big playmaker. CJ Baxter and Jaden Blue played in the college football playoff. 4 offensive linemen started in a college football playoff. That's a big difference for Quinn Ewers when he looks in his huddle.
The other one has a top 25 start on his one, resume as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a much more experienced, big game experienced offense this year than it was a year ago heading into 2023.
No, I think that's a great point. And it's exciting. And with spring ball just over 3 weeks away, we're starting to get closer to finally seeing how Sarkisian's going to deploy all these guys on the field. Because like you said, I think this ceiling is very high. And we're coming off of a team in 2023 where we saw a lot of big plays from the big stars on the roster. And if Texas can duplicate that again, starting with Quinn Ewers, it's going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, for opposing defenses to figure out where to attack this Texas defense because, again, there's just so many pieces there. Yeah. So, we'll get more and more updates as we get closer to spring ball. But thank you for joining us today on this weekend edition of On Texas Football, and we'll have more updates coming in, recruiting, team, everything around spring football coming in on Texas Football this weekend and moving into the spring football season as well. So for Gerry Hamilton, I'm CJ Vogel, and thank you very much for joining us. See you next time.